So we're gonna discuss triceps training or just the triceps in regards to blocking or generating lineman special strength.
Mhm.
So we have a post here, I'll share it, and then we'll kind of go through it. So the triceps, so in our training manual, we label the triceps as soft tissue, meaning they're comprised of red muscle tissue and white connective tissue, right? So if you look here on this complete anatomy picture, this orange stuff is actually the red tissue, and the white stuff is the yellow tissue. So the red stuff is muscle tissue, the white stuff is connective tissue. So how that works is the nervous system interfaces with the red tissue to pull on the white tissue to essentially generate force, right? And so
Mhm.
we've essentially shown the image of Lyman special strength, where there's a reactive strength component, a static strength component, a concentric strength component, and an eccentric strength component. And those are globally. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go over them locally and discuss how these four special strengths have to occur in blocking. So for reactive strength, the way to think about that is on first contact with the target, the white connective tissue of the triceps is going to absorb, i.e., react to the external forces. The static strength is going to be the isometric, right? So they're going to lock the elbow joint in place to hold joint range of motion to mitigate any physical displacement. The concentric strength is going to be when the defender needs displaced, the triceps will shorten to then displace the target. And then eccentric is when the defender's generally outputting force, I would say, and the triceps lengthen under load to control and absorb it. So essentially, you can see all four of these special strengths are going to occur in the tricep. So, and what kind of made us think about this was, is essentially the tricep injuries that have occurred to, this Vera Tucker. It's the second time he ruptured his tricep tendon. And so for him, you can see, we talk about limiting constraints. This is his number one limiting constraint. So
Mhm.
with all that being said, I found it kind of interesting, and we were just having a discussion about how what the special strengths that you see globally when you block, you also see and can really understand with the triceps.
Mhm. Definitely. And it's just what capacity, and obviously it's on his film, but what was he missing that his tricep couldn't handle whatever load was going into it,
Hmm.
right? And I wonder, now that you put that up there, I wonder if they defined it the first time he blew it out and then actually trained to give him that capacity. Like
Hmm.
what strength does he keep blowing his tricep out on?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, exactly. So
You
you're
know?
saying, yeah, so concentric strength is going to be this, where the tricep is going to shorten to extend.
Hmm.
Eccentric is going to be this. Static
Hmm.
is just going to be holding, and then reactive is going to be where you have to react to that target, and that connective tissue's got to stress stiffen before the nervous system has time to be able to go online.
So you're saying reactive is the tricep essentially recognizing the force coming at it.
Exactly. So,
Okay.
so if you think about it, there's a neuromuscular lag time,
Hmm.
right? So like when somebody comes and hits your hand,
Hmm.
before you can technically like hold, what's going to happen is the connective tissue is going to stiffen,
Okay.
right? So the
Okay.
white connective tissue stiffens, and then your nervous system feels that stiffening, and then because you can feel it, then you can respond accordingly, whether that's eccentrically, concentrically, or statically.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. The respawn for him would almost be in the correct way, right? So I wonder what would he have to do to understand? Would his doctor have to tell him where it's actually tearing in the white or the red stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, yeah, unfortunately, we don't know enough, right? But
No, we don't.
right? Because we don't have the film like you had said before we got on here. But yeah, we were essentially, if we had the film, so let's act
Hmm.
like we had the film. If we
Hmm.
had the film, we would be able to see what phase of the block the tissue yielded.
Hmm.
right? Like
Where?
what exactly.
When did
Exactly
he
right.
feel it pop? We'd have to ask him probably.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So we would have to ask him. You're right. We'd have to ask him. Then we would have to look at the film and be
Hmm.
like, oh, maybe it was on that initial reaction phase. Maybe it was he was trying to press, right? And
Hmm.
on that pressing motion, instead of him displacing the target, the tissue yielded,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Right. The interesting part that to me, right, is the fact that because we had discussions about blocking and like trying to define blocking,
Hmm.
right? And so I think I think the main point, which is interesting, is the fact that you can see we've just discussed four special strengths in just the tricep, right? But the reason why we can do that is because we're going to view the lineman as an absolute strength athlete
Right.
that has to generate these types of special strengths to block, but
Hmm.
they're not going to know technically which one they have to do on the block.
Right. Yeah. And you got to train them all. So
Exactly.
because like you just went through the blocking, right? The concentric, the eccentric, and then the static, and then the reactive part. Well, every block has all of them in it. Just depends on what you're trying to do at that moment,
Exactly.
right? So somewhere, because if it's twice, somewhere his tricep training is not correct.
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
essentially. Yeah, essentially what's happening is his triceps are the limiting constraint. So his nervous system was still outputting, but the
Mhm.
biology that was his triceps yielded.
Right. I got you. Yeah.
You see, right? And so this is essentially feedback as to like how important specifically for this guy, right? Like think about it. If this guy was able to have maybe let's say normal functioning triceps, normal elbow joints, because the elbow joint goes into that. Like you would
Hmm.
like think about it, like if you start to lose elbow joint range of motion, right? Then the amount of tissue that the nervous system has access to starts to shrink.
Right.
So now you
Yeah.
could be like, think about your case. Like if you're 290 pounds, but you're blocking somebody that's, let's say, 350 pounds,
Hmm.
and your elbow joint is shrinking during the season.
Hmm.
Okay, well, that force still has to go through the elbow, but maybe instead of going through the elbow capsule, maybe a lot of it starts to go through the tricep.
Right. Got you. So the tricep is taking on everything now
Yeah,
because your elbow doesn't work or your wrist or whatever doesn't work.
exactly. Exactly. And that's what's interesting to see is because now that it's kind of in season phase, in the in season phase, you want to bring functioning joints to let's say week one,
Hmm.
right? Like week one in a perfect world, like all the joints are functioning. But as you
Right.
know from playing, as you play, football isn't good for joint function. It takes functional joints and makes them dysfunctional,
Right. Yeah.
right? So it's interesting that so essentially, and that's one of the reasons why like we train those elbows so much, but then also the punch punches.
Right. Yeah. But you have to keep making sure that your elbow joint is functional.
Correct.
Yeah. Because as soon as you lose the function there, then you have to be using something else.
Exactly.
So maybe it was his tricep that worked and it was his elbow that didn't.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So it's interesting to see. And then I'll share this. And then, yeah, because then, the other thing that was interesting is here's, uh, the tunch punches.
Hmm.
So, so I didn't know this. I'm sure you knew this, but Tunch Ilkin in over 6 games and head-to-head matchups with, Reggie White never gave a sack to him, right?
Right. And I did know that, and is only because Tunch mentioned it every time I saw him. But Tunch was awesome, man. And like you're saying, he just developed that punch, that skill to use his arms and slow guys like who could slow Reggie White down, but he found a way.
Yeah, exactly. And so what's interesting about that is when you think about like the tunch punch, right? What's the thing that the nervous system uses to do it? the biological thing was the tricep.
Right. Hmm.
So it's quite interesting how, not just the tricep training, but what's also interesting is being able to then use the tricep in a very specific skilled way to
Hmm.
punch in a manner that enables the lineman to block the target.
Right. Right. To train and also to train all those strengths so you can use it the right way, right? Like and like Tunch just talk a lot about, obviously the triceps and the lats and everything you're using to put force into the punch. So all of that has to be training. And then, like you're saying with the tissue training is just tissue training. So the triceps, you're trying to train everything.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because that's one thing that Tunch does mention is
Hmm.
the importance of the lats. And
Hmm.
if you think about that, right, if you think about that, in regards to, anybody that has tricep issues, let's say,
Hmm.
right,
Hmm.
like if you're only absorbing into the elbow and not into the lat, there's
Hmm.
more eccentric force that's going to go into the elbow and the tricep tendon.
Right.
So
Yeah.
let me ask you a question. When you're doing punch punches,
Hmm.
right? Like you're trying to feel it in the lat as much as in the tricep.
Yes. Now, Tunch designed it, and this is the way I understood it when I talked to him. Wish we could still talk to him, but he designed, so we'll go 15 seconds on, 15 seconds off, 3 sets, right, of four different punching patterns. He designed it so you had to use all your elbows and arms, and they would wear out. And then
Hmm.
the only choice you had was to load everything, your back and your lats. And then you would feel your lats because all your little, he called it little muscles, would get tired.
Hmm.
And then you learn how to use it all together,
Hmm. Man, that's
right? So yeah, so it's really smart. I mean, he was a really unbelievably smart guy. Right? And that system he developed, I think the guy he worked with was a kung fu or karate guy named Sarge. And
hmm
one day I think I have it. We could show film of like they're in a basement hitting a heavy bag, figuring this out in like the 70s or 80s, right? But that's why he developed the system. So you'd wear everything out, and eventually you had to load your lat, and obviously it ends with the tricep and the elbow extension, but you have to bring it from your big muscles.
Which is interesting because think about it from an internal perspective. So what he figured out to do is brilliant because you would do those 3 rounds and then you would be so fatigued with the triceps that your nervous system couldn't use them anymore. And then you had to learn how to use your lats, which is like more
Right.
of like your shoulder and like your entire torso, right?
Hmm.
To actually be able to then, and so then think about how much more force you can generate if, like you're saying, that by doing those, you're syncing up the nervous system with the triceps, but also the lats and the whole arm. So now your punch is going to be significantly probably better.
Right. Yeah, because the lat's a huge muscle. So if you know how to use that in your punch, and then like you're saying, like it absorbs it. It eccentrically, like you're absorbing it into your lats and your triceps too.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's just like everything Tunch went over to teach you how to punch was that so everything worked together as we were talking about with protecting your tricep with your wrist and your elbow and all the things you need.
Hmm. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, perfect. Do you want to discuss anything else here?
No, that was awesome.
Yeah,